Well, I agree very much with what the previous speaker said, especially at the end. What I have to say will very much coincide with what Pauline said. In a few places I disagree. I have four things by which I judge everything and that I want you to judge everything by. One is logic and common sense. Is what we're saying simply sensible? Number two is evidence. What's the reality of it? What does the research show us? Number three is experience. Does it tie into people's experience, including your experience? And the fourth thing is meaning. I'm always searching for the meaning of things, the meaning of words and the meaning of our policies, the meaning of our ideas. Is what we're doing meaningful? So where do you get your information and your ideas about addiction? Well, a lot of them come from America. So I've come from America to contest some of these ideas, although you've come up with some bits on your own. And, well, I don't want to scare you, but I'm going to tell you everything you think is wrong. You can laugh now, but people find that frightening. Has anybody in this room ever taken a painkiller? Could you please raise your hand? Turn around, Liam, wake up, turn around and look at them. Raise your hand now. Raise your hand.
Am I counting them?
No. Have any of you become addicted to a painkiller? Turn around. Has anybody, raise your hand if you become addicted to a painkiller? Summarize what we've just seen.
The vast majority of people have used
Everybody's taken a painkiller and nobody's become addicted. Isn't that stunning? When you come from the United States, what you hear all the time is that, well, opiates are addictive. They're a chemical that grab your brain, take control of you. And you all believe it, but it's not true for any person in this room, either yourselves or anybody that you know. So why do you believe it? Why didn't you become addicted, by the way? Man there with the beer, why didn't you become addicted when you took a painkiller? You. How are you? My name's Stanton Peele. Why didn't you become addicted? I don't know. Isn't that what we are all about, though? Isn't that the thing we want to know? Why people become addicted or not? Isn't that it? Why didn't you become addicted? You haven't thought about it. Huh. What's that? Well, what a strange idea. People take painkillers and then the pain stops and they stop taking a painkiller. You don't need a big elaborate theory for that, do you? All the theories that you've learned about addiction aren't as good as the most simple common sense. I'm going to give you one big idea, by the way, of why I think none of the people in this room, all of whom have taken painkillers, became addicted. I'll give you one word. Connectivity. I think basically all the people in this room are connected to life in a way that made it impossible for them to become addicted to a painkiller. What's the toughest drug addiction to quit, by the way? Shout it out, come on. What? Smoking. Well, you finally came up with an answer. Good work. And I go to audiences where they've sampled many addictions, if you know what I'm saying, and they'll shout out, smoking is the toughest addiction to quit. Has anybody in this room quit smoking? Please raise your hand. Turn around. Wake up, Leon. Raise your hand. Raise your hand now. of you people who've quit smoking addiction, how many of you use some type of support group or therapy like Shantex or nicotine replacement? This you can count. Count, Liam. How many?
I see 3 hands.
3 hands. So maybe a third to a half of this group has quit the smoking addiction. 100 people, 80 people, and 3 have used the therapy to do that. Now, isn't that funny? Isn't it? Don't we all know that the only way you can, and it's the toughest addiction. You said so. Ain't that strange? We all know that treatment is necessary to overcome addiction, and yet amongst you, a majority perhaps, or almost, have quit the toughest addiction, and virtually none of you relied on any form of treatment. What's that tell us? What? Shout it out. Come.
Treatment's not always necessary.
Treatment's not often necessary, and I'm glad you're able to say that because you were one of the treatment people. Very good search for meaning. That people have the resources within themselves to overcome addiction. Now, the idea that opioids are addictive and treatment is necessary, those aren't old, crazy ideas. Those are the modern public health model. So we're going beyond public health model here. Oh, no. Oh. Okay.
Where were you?
All right. 3, next one.
There you go.
No, a little bit more. What one should I push here?
This is the one that is up on the screen, and this is your next slide. You with me?
Okay.
Yeah. So you're on.
So
that
you've
one
been
there.
misinformed against your own experience. You believe things that aren't true by your own experience. Why do you ignore your own truths? Why would you believe things that aren't true for you? It's the power of ideas, and in this case, bad and wrong ideas. But you know what you might say? You might say this to me. You might say, Stanton, what's it to you? So what if we believe a lot of wrong things? Go mind your own beeswax. We have our beliefs, you have your beliefs. We'll all go to our own separate corners, and we'll all be happy. In America, we tell everybody that addiction is an equal opportunity. Everybody's equally likely to get addicted. But of course, then how come that not one person here got addicted to opiates? The capital of addiction in America is West Virginia. 52 per 100,000 per annum. And they hired a new public health commissioner. And his name's Gupta, and I know instantly you'll realize that's not an Irish name. They brought somebody from India who was trained in medical school in India, and he had this idea that he would examine the causes of death of every single person who died in West Virginia. Look at all of them. And what did he find? Do you think it was young people who died? Or middle? You're peeking, I can see you're peeking. The man there, is it young people that die of these overdoses or more middle-aged people, 35 to 49? Man there with the hands crossed, which is it? Now, isn't that strange? If it's overdose, wouldn't it be the naive user who dies? Isn't that logical? So what's this tell us about dying? Who's dying? What kind of people? The lady there. What kind of people are dying from these from drugs? What's that? And what's that tell you about them and their lives?
Struggling.
What's that?
They're struggling.
They're struggling. Okay, no more answers from you. Although you use Shantex, and I hold that against you, you're done talking. They're struggling with their lives. They're not dying from the drug. Their lives are a struggle. 35 to your equal opportunity, they have less than a high school education. They're single. Now, if any of you work in, well, places like where Pauline works, this isn't surprising, is it? What a high-risk population looks like? But in America, everybody says it's an equal opportunity destroyer. We'll talk about why do they say that. By the way, those people in West Virginia tend to be white and they're dying of painkillers. And the parallel phenomenon is heroin deaths in inner cities. Overall opioid overdose deaths read among black men increased between the ages of 40 and 69, 245%. So you're looking to America for answers, are you? So if you thought men and women were equally likely to die, if you thought the young were dying equally, if you thought, well, rich people, they're dying just like poor people. And remember, I did say connectedness or connectivity. Single people are dying. Gupta said a depressingly consistent profile. It's like almost all of the deaths were like this. There are hardly any exceptions. But we only hear about the exceptions. Why sell equal opportunity? Why make that claim? Well, it's another way of saying that drugs cause addiction. Remember the first thing we did? Opioids make you addicted, except opioids didn't make you addicted. That's an idea. It's a fundamental idea. It's a very important idea that doesn't have any basis in your experience, but which we like to sell for some reason. And if you want to sell that idea, you can't say different people are more likely to die, can you? What you experience, that can't be true. That has to be denied. So you have to say, well, everybody's equally likely to die. And then we can attack drugs. Because what are you going to do about a single, solitary, uneducated man in West Virginia? And what are you going to do about an inner city black ghetto? What's to be done about that? Well, that's complicated, isn't it? As Pauline's slide showed, how many things have to be done. But I have an even more depressing answer to give you. We sort of don't care about these people, really. We only care, if one person out of 10,000 from a middle class background dies, well, we care about him. They made a movie called Beautiful Child about a kid who became addicted to meth. He didn't die. In fact, he's now a writer about addiction. His father is a well-known writer. They're not going to make a movie about some person in Appalachia who dies of an overdose. Who's going to go to that stupid movie? They're going to make a movie about a well-off kid from a rich family. And then we can all say, oh my God, I hope that doesn't happen to me. Because they're the ones we care about. I've been going through myths here, perhaps. Drugs cause addiction. But is this a drug problem? Those guys in that Appalachia dying? You know they also are more likely to die of cirrhosis. They're also more likely to commit suicide. That's the one group of white people in America whose life expectancy is declining. There's already a big gap between white and black life expectancy. So addiction isn't about the thing. It's about an experience that comes from a thing or an involvement. It involves the person and it involves their situation. And I'll just give you some quick research references. We had an experiment with heroin addiction that we called the Vietnam War. We sent a lot of young men to Vietnam. About 50% of them became addicted to heroin there. And then they came back to the United States, and 95% of them stopped being addicted, even though 50% of them took a narcotic when they got home. And all of the medical experts said, This defies everything we ever knew about addiction, which is once a person becomes addicted to a drug, they become perpetually addicted. That's their nature. But if you knew nothing about theories of addiction, if somebody said, well, some young men went away from home to Vietnam, they were frightened for their lives, they were separated from their families. In that case, many men became addicted to heroin, and then they came home and they stopped being addicted. You'd all say, well, of course, stupid. Is that the most commonsensical thing there could be? Rat Park is an experiment by a friend of mine named Bruce Alexander. You know, you can get an animal addicted in a cage. They'll repeatedly take a narcotic. So here's the whole darn experiment. They built a bigger place for the rats where they could run around and have a Ferris wheel, and they could have, I don't know how to put it, but there were men rats and female rats. Do you kind of get where I'm going? And all of the rats stopped taking the narcotic. So what does that sign? Sex is a more powerful motivator than narcotics and withdrawal. So we could have all kinds of slides here about sex addiction, couldn't we? And yet we expect most people not to become addicted to sex, even though nearly everybody has it. Isn't that amazing? Rats prefer sex to morphine even when they've been habituated to morphine. So I've been talking about an idea here. The idea that the United States is selling the world, and which you have somewhat bought, is that we're going to solve addiction medically. What's that mean? That we're going to find an area and not one person in the world is diagnosed for addiction by an MRI. They don't bring you in, give you an MRI and say, oh, he's addicted. They say you're addicted because why do they say you're addicted? The lady there nodding her head, blonde hair. Why do they say you're addicted? Hello, my name's Stanton Peele. How do they decide somebody's addicted?
Because they compulsively use overdose.
Well, they compulsively use it, and what happens to their lives? What happens to their lives? Guy with the glasses here. How do we decide people are addicted? By clinical standards. How do we decide people have a substance use disorder? It becomes the number one priority, and it screws up the rest of their life. Bad things happen to them. That's how they come to us. If that bad things don't happen to them, they don't come to us. And they're promising that they're going to solve this with a medical solution. The endorphins were discovered in the late 60s, and they began to announce that we almost had solved mental illness, addiction, and dealing with pain. How's it been going since then, would you say? And I'm going to tell you that this way of thinking is causing our current epidemic. I have a slide here. This is America in a nutshell. What's this slide of? What's this slide say? What is it a slide of? It's drug deaths in America in up to 2017. So at the top right there is synthetic opioids, then heroin, then natural opioids, then cocaine. Do you notice something? They're all rising. It's hard to miss. I didn't make this slide up. I'm not as good with graphics as Pauline. I got this from the Centers for Disease Control. By the way, do you notice when they all start jumping up? Around 2012, 2013? Something else very significant has been happening in the United States starting in 2012, 2013. What's been happening to prescriptions for opioids since 2012, 2013? What's been happening to them? What's that? What do you say?
They're being forged.
Spell it.
Is it forged? Forced. Forged, as in fraud. Forged.
No, the reason I thought you almost gave the right answer. That's forgive me for saying it, the exactly 360% wrong answer. What have people been forced to do with prescriptions in America? What's that? Promoted? I can't get you off your mitts. I'll have to talk to each one of you personally and take you out for a beer. You think prescription medications in America are being promoted? Wonder where you found out. So nobody knows the right answer? Not one person?
Somebody mentioned
What?
prescription.
What's that?
Overprescribed.
I won't be able to get you to stop answering this question the wrong way, no matter how often I say. It'll be impossible for me. It can't be done. How powerfully a wrong idea, you know how they describe the opioid molecule? Forget that a wrong idea gets in your brain and you can never possibly dislodge it. And you can't answer, but you might know the answer. Prescription painkillers in America have been dropping radically since 2012, 2013. Are you amazed? You're amazed because you think drugs cause addiction, aren't you? So if you have fewer drugs, and I disagree slightly with my very good friend Shane, that the more you have of something, the more addiction you have. But I don't think, when you leave this room, not one person's probably going to believe what I've just told you, even though if I could have another graphic, deaths go like this, and prescriptions go down. How's that possible? How could that be? How's that happening? What's happening? Isn't this the fundamental? What'd she say?
Is it something to do with the increase in poverty and the results of the recession?
Well, it might be true, but why is there a direct relationship to the decline in prescriptions and the increase in deaths? Why that direct relationship? What's black market mean? What's that? So where do they get their narcotics then? As a rule of thumb, you're going to do worse getting your opioids on the street rather than from a prescribed source. But that's not the whole answer, and they're going to drag me off because things have gone on for a while here. But I'm going to tell you the real reason why deaths are increasing. So how are we, every group in America, from the most radical harm reduction group to the most mainstream American Medical Association, say the same thing. What you all believe, everybody believes it. Why can't I just believe what everybody else believes? Would I be a happier man, do you think? You think so? I just get along, go out for a beer, and what would I have to worry about? Well, of course I wouldn't have much to talk about. So they all believe that we should cut back prescriptions, and they have this little problem that we've been cutting back prescriptions and more people are dying. But that's not, as you show, it's not a problem. You can talk right around that. So this is the chair of the AMA Opioid Task Force. While this progress report, 2017 report on prescriptions, while this progress report shows physician leadership and action to help reverse the epidemic, we're cutting back prescription drugs tremendously. More than 115 people in the United States die daily. We have a great strategy with the minor problem that more and more people are dying. And so how do we react to that? Just like you in this room. They're going to press for more and more reduction of prescription drugs. What else can you do? What else could we possibly do? It's logical for them. Now, there's one other area. We talked about methadone. I don't have the time to go into all. Research shows that people who leave treatment who are put on buprenorphine or methadone are less likely to die. So we concluded that we'll provide that as a wide-scale public health technique. In the United States, we hear frequently one complaint. It's hard to do that in rural areas. It's hard to get methadone to people in rural Iowa. But we've been much more effective in doing that in cities. The areas where MAT is most readily available have shown the greatest surge in drug deaths. Large US cities see big junk in deadly opioid overdoses. Darn it. Once again, we have the perfect policy, and these people are dying on us. Why don't I define addiction while I'm at it? Would that be useful, do you think? Because I asked you. You become involved in something that diminishes your awareness of surroundings and feelings. It's immediate and predictable and encompassing sensations. Now, drugs are useful for addiction because if you inject heroin, you're pretty sure what you're going to feel like. They offer a full sense of control and personal value, but they reduce your healthy options, impairing the person. They worsen your negative feelings about yourself. They cause distress. So it's a cycle. And there's nothing special about the opioid molecule that makes people addicted. It's the fact that opioids are an effective mood modifier, especially when snorted or injected, that makes them satisfactory. This is the part where I make a plea for me to win the Nobel Prize.
You skipped an extra slide there, Stanton. You need to go back one. Or was it forward one?
I know where I am. I only seem at loose ends. I wrote a book in 1975 called Love and Addiction, in which I said that addiction is not a result of drugs. It's a result of a kind of a powerful involvement people create. The two ruling diagnostic documents in the world are the DSM, American Psychiatric Manual, and ICD-11, which is the International Classification of Diseases by the World Health Organization. Neither of them calls any drug addictive. But the word addiction does appear. DSM-5 is called substance use disorders and behavioral addictions. And ICD-11 identifies sex and games as addictive. What they're slowly coming to realize is drugs do not cause addiction. People become addicted to experiences that accomplish certain things for them with detrimental effects that they become wedded to. That's what addiction is. And I'm here with my colleague. They didn't dare just bring some American in here. I've come with an Irishman. Raise your hand. This is Dahi Conlon. He's from Ireland. And we have a program called the Life Process Program. So I may have been depressing and worrying you, telling you that everything you believe is not only wrong, but dangerous and killing people. Forgive me, it's a little rude, I realize, to come somewhere and tell people that. But I do, and then the solutions for why people in inner cities and in Appalachia are dying are gigantic. And Pauline's tackling them, and you're tackling them too. Bless your souls. But it ain't easy. In the United States, we don't even bother to tackle them. We don't even believe in that stuff. We are withdrawing money from community programs in favor of medical programs. So we have a life process program, which is I had a rehab center, and we have an online program that's built around the purpose and meaning. That was so very important for Pauline. Values and personal resources, skills and attitudes, relationships and community, and agency, engagement, and maturity. Those are very subjective things. But what did Pauline ended by saying? Helping parents believe that they can be good parents. That's a funny intervention, isn't it? Well, you give them help, but you actually help them to believe that they can be good parents. It's called psychology. We don't convince people they're addicts in the life process program. We don't label people. We say, tell us about your substance use or whatever. And then we say, has this led to any issues for you? What are you concerned about in life? How do these two things connect? We reject giving people labels. Because what good would it do Pauline's people for them to have been told you're a lousy, you're a born and bred lousy parent. You don't have the right stuff to be a parent, or your parents were bad parents, you're doomed. I think that's a good psychological approach. Because remember, 97% of the people in this room quit the hardest addiction to quit on their own. The greatest resource that people have is their own personal resources and beliefs in themselves. And likewise, we don't tell people that drugs are uncontrollable. It's people with the most self-mastery, experience of personal initiative, engagement, and purpose who are least likely to become addicted. What question did I ask you at dinner last night, Liam?
Which one?
About your children.
Was it about parenting styles?
Yeah, but I asked you one thing.
Oh, was it the values that we instill in...
Well, I asked you specifically, what quality...
We had a long conversation over dinner. He asked
You were there, you were present. I'm not very good at small talk. Do you know what I mean? They went out for dinner. So, well, let's have a couple beers. I was there with Shane and Colin, and I asked, well, among the questions I asked, Liam, was, what's the most important quality that you want your children to have?
Oh, yeah.
Now you remember. But I'm not going to go into that. I'll tell you what I have 3 children, 3 grandchildren. You gotta love. It's great. I love Ireland. Pauline hadn't arrived yet. There were 5 men. Okay, little man's clubby. All right, sorry. All of the Irish men there had families. Same marriage for 20 and more years. All of them had children. And all of them had a drink or two. You gotta love Ireland, come on. So all of them, when we say that doing more of something makes you addicted, what we're saying is if you do something repetitively, you'll become addicted to it. But if you look at my definition of addiction, that makes no sense whatsoever. I mean, people who are in well-adjusted lives will have sex regularly, and they'll be in loving relationships, perhaps, for a long time. Does that make them more likely to become addicted to sex and love? You might say the opposite. My book, Love and Addiction, the Nobel Prize thing, remember? It contrasts love and addiction. And love is an experience where you're expanded and addiction contracts you, makes you less capable of dealing with life. A loving relationship is one that expands your capacity to deal with people. And, you know, okay, he didn't get the right answer right here, but God bless him, he's in a long-term relationship. He and the other parents there, we're concerned about, he has 4 kids. So, you know, they're all different. You've got different concerns about all of them. He's engaged with his kids. He's engaged with his wife. He's been together a long time. But he's concerned about the people he works with and for. He's concerned about helping those people. And yet here he was out at night with a bunch of guys having some beers, spending the whole night having a talk with them. So and I asked him about his relationship with his wife. What can I tell you? I'm a busybody. And he said she's very supportive of him. You know, some wives would say, you're going to go out with a bunch of men, talk about addiction? Give me a break. But that wasn't the case. He's in a relationship that expands his capacity to deal with other human beings and to do his work. So no matter how he's been with his wife for XDX years, that's not addictive, you see. All right, I'm going to come to the close with my last myth. I did have one disagreement with him. Do you know how I keep asking you the same question and you kept giving the same wrong answer? Because you can't rewire, you can't escape that addiction to a bad idea. Well, he has an idea, and he learned it from my good friend Shane. If you drink more, you have more problems. So during the ride home, I had a dinner with him and I had a ride with him. He kept saying, well, drinking is going up, and we're having, you know, people are blah, 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 blah. And then he dropped in, well, alcohol consumption in Ireland has been going down since 2010. So I had to interrupt him. I said, you keep saying drinking is going down, is increasing, but you told me it's going down. What's the mistake in his mind? Can we help think through the mistake in his mind? Can we help this poor man do an intervention? Shane's too old. We won't be able to help him. What's the connection he's making? The wrong connection he's making. Lady there. What's the wrong connection he's making? You. You can help her, your friend, help her. What's the connection he's making in his mind that he can't escape? He can't escape it. The guy with the beard, you must be smart. What's the connection he can't escape making? What's that?
He's thinking consumption and addiction are the same thing.
Right. Colin was the other guy at dinner. He thinks that consumption and addiction are the same thing. He believes that the drug causes addiction. If you consume more, you're going to become you're more likely to become addicted. That's true, isn't it? Everybody believes that. I'm almost done. You can go to the bathroom and he won't holler at you. The people who came up with the policy that Shane described, the public health policy for alcohol, they all come from a certain region of the world. Would you know what region that is? They're all like-minded. What religion are they all? I hate to get in religion in Ireland. They're all the same religion. What religion are they all? You know what religion they all are, Shane? They're all Protestant. Shane, he has the information. They're all Northern European and English-speaking countries that think that if you drink too much, it's bad for you. They did an international comparison of European countries, and they compared level of consumption of alcohol with problems. I know you might want to leave the room. There's a negative correlation. Countries that consume more alcohol have fewer problems. How is that possible? How can that be? How can that be, miss? They're more laid back? Well, we're getting in the ballpark. Well, I mean, the obvious answer for why alcohol consumption is going down and problems are going up is that people are consuming alcohol poorly, in a bad manner. Do you know what that's like? You know, everybody knows what that's like. We had dinner. Everybody at that table drank. We had beer, we had whiskey. Thanks for the suggestion, Shane. And we had wine. Nobody got drunk, nobody misbehaved, everybody was cheerful, everybody interacted in a positive manner. Nobody stumbled home or got in an accident. But a fair amount of alcohol was consumed. Wouldn't you say, Shane, a fair amount of alcohol was consumed? How come no problem, Shane? Well, you got to think about the meaning of things. Am I picking on Shane? He keeps telling me when he invited me to speak at Trinity about this damn email a lady sent him from Hazleton saying, "You're inviting Stanton Peele to speak? You're an idiot." And Shane wrote a really long email back to her saying, "I'm not an idiot. We let people speak here. He didn't defend me for 1 second, and he's still bringing it up to me 20 years later." How do we know the people in Northern Europe, the people who determine our alcohol policy, they measured something called alcohol-related deaths. Get back to death a lot, don't we? In the Northern European countries, there are 18 deaths per 100,000 per man per year, alcohol-related. In Southern Europe, that's France, Italy, Spain, Portugal, Greece, Cyprus, there are 3. With women, it's 3 versus, do you see that? There's 6-fold as many deaths in Northern European countries from alcohol as Southern countries, even though they drink more alcohol in the South. How's that possible? Miss, what do you think's going on? Have you ever been to Italy, miss? You. Second row, miss. Yes. Have you ever been to Italy? Have you been to Italy? My name's Stanton Peele. I hope you'll forgive this intrusion.
Me, oh sorry.
Have you ever been to Italy?
Yes.
Have you ever noticed anything about their consumption of alcohol? Did it strike you? Don't they drink an awful lot of wine at every meal? Don't they just bring out wine when you eat? Don't they say, well, this is just normal? You've been to Italy and you've noticed that? Strikes you. So Northern Europe has decided they've got to improve the lives of people in Southern Europe, so they're inducing them to raise their drinking age. By the way, these things have consequences. They measure 15 to 16-year-old drunks. Irish, 47%, Italian, 27%, past month, 25% Irish, twice as many in Ireland as Italy. They're not getting a good start. This is too long to read. They drink differently in Mediterranean countries. It's an essential accompaniment of a good time at social and family gatherings where everybody knows how to behave. You don't have to tell people, don't misbehave. You're there with your grandmother, for God's sake. And they did, a friend of mine named Franca Beccaria did a study. They asked Finnish youths, when did they first drink? And like Irish youths, they all had the answer. Around 15 or 16, and they went out and got drunk. What does an Italian kid, adult, say when you ask them, when did you first drink? What do they say? But they don't know when they first drank. Because, you're not keeping track when you're 5 or 6. So, I have a little different message from my good friend Liam and my colleague Shane. I don't think the solution is having people drink less in Ireland. That's not my approach to the meaning of addiction. And I test marketed this. This summer in August, I came to Northern Ireland to visit with Dahi, with my 10-year-old grandson. And they were having a concert. And people brought their kids, and they were playing like 70s and 80s kind of music. They served beer. It was an older crowd, if you know what I mean. Do you think a lot of people got drunk and got in fights and everything at that environment? Of course not. Everybody knew how to behave themselves. And what am I telling you? The context, the message that you convey about drinking and what's appropriate in a given setting is the most crucial determinant of behavior. Now, that's not an easy thing, is it? You can't change a whole culture. That can't be done. But there are ways you can set up environments to be more socially positive drinking environments. And he told me one other thing. It was more constructive, other than the confusing consumption and problem. He said, things have gotten worse in Ireland because when my father went to a bar in the old days at a pub, if somebody got drunk, his friends and neighbors would say, you should go home now. You should be with your family, or you should take care of yourself. And the word for that is, what's the word for that? You're looking at your watch. Okay, one more slide after this, but all right. Well, it's caring and community. And we're not going to reverse community deterioration very readily. We can do what we can as individuals. But here's an idea I have. There's something called brief interventions. That's a real thing, where you train people, non-professionals, to intervene with people who are seemingly getting engaged in a problem behavior, like alcohol. And they are a way to talk to the person in a non-directive way to ask, well, how are you and what are you doing? Should you be doing this? I have a mild suggestion. I'm an expert on treating addiction or coaching addiction, but as a policy person, I'm throwing some ideas out there. And my idea is to train somebody at a bar employee, to do brief interventions for people who appear to have a problem, who are just left where they are now in a bar. People aren't going to help them. And where in the old days, a friend or relative would have helped them. And one last thing I suggest is making help accessible. You don't have, Liam informed me, alcohol treatment services virtually in Galway. The Life Process program that Dahi and I are presenting is a way for people to readily get help by going online, filling out some things. They can talk to a coach or a counselor online, making it as easy as possible to get help when you need it. Okay, here's my last slide. They've redefined, SAMHSA means Substance Abuse and Mental Health Services Administration. They redefined recovery, very similarly to what Pauline said. 4 pillars of recovery. Health, people have to be healthy. Home, we've discussed that, haven't we? purpose. Purpose. You need a reason to. Those guys who are dying in West Virginia or in inner city Baltimore, what do they lack? More than anything, purpose. So, in the Life Process program, we encourage them to get positively involved in education and work and community. Okay, I have one more point to make. No more slides. I asked what his most important quality for his children was. The most important quality I owe you an answer that I thought I should give my children is agency, the ability to believe and the ability to control their own existences. I think there's nothing more essential or important in life. I believe every one of those people at that table were doing that with their children, whether they conceived it that way or not. We could have a whole talk about how you give people agency, their belief that their capabilities. Pauline discussed that with parents. You give them the chance. Well, I have one more Irish story. Is it time to get off now? Is it about time? No more stories? I give one more story. So I brought my 10-year-old grandson to Daihi's, and I wanted him to see his own efforts succeeding. I want him to do things. The year before, I took him to my friend Larry's in in Idaho, and he made a stool, and that's the proudest thing, he's a carpenter, he has in his life, a stool that he built. And so he went out, we picked berries, and he made jam with Daihi's wife, and he brought that home. And every morning he would go out, Daihi has chickens, and get eggs. And one morning I got a feeling for how many eggs were coming in. I said, I'll bet you $5 that there's more than 3 eggs out there. And sure enough, he came in with 3 eggs. Can you see where this story is going? So that afternoon, we went to that thing that I talked about, the concert, and when we were coming home, Daihi's calculating in his mind, well, we have to have a meal, we have to have an omelet, but it's his 2 kids and him and me and my grandson. 3 eggs isn't going to do it. I'm such a genius, ain't I? I'm going to win the Nobel Prize. Daihi turns to Cassius and he said, how many eggs did you leave out there in the coop? And Cassius said, 2. And Daihi said, why don't you get those eggs and we'll make an omelet? How did Daihi know that he had left 2 eggs out there to win the bet? So this is by way of telling you, I don't know the answers to everything. It's a modest statement on my part. But I want to go back to that one table. Why are all sorts of drug deaths increasing in America? Synthetic narcotics, painkillers, heroin, meth and cocaine. What do they have to do with prescriptions? Why are all deaths increasing? Because the modern medical approach to addiction does nothing so much as to remove a sense of agency from the individual and from the people trying to help that individual. And a sense of agency, as Pauline pointed out, is the essential ingredient in what you're trying to give people, to allow them to overcome the issues they face in life, including addiction issues. We're doing exactly the wrong thing. Thanks so much for having me speak.